Good morning. So today I read Joshua chapter 17, and it's much of the same of what we've been reading before in terms of like allotments to the various tribes of Israel. In fact, kind of glancing ahead, there's going to be at least a couple more chapters of that, and then also talking about cities and similar kind of vibe. But what I read that was interesting today, and there's always a nugget. I know all the Bible is important. Of course, I'm not saying there's not stuff everywhere, but there's always a nugget that you can kind of grasp onto when you're reading, even in some of the chapters that we might consider to be less applicable to modern life today. But here's what I saw in Joshua 17, verse kind of starting in verse 14. The people of Israel that were getting this allotment of land said, "Hey, this land's basically too small for us, and we need more land because we're a big tribe." And then they said, "There's still people in Canaan here, and we can't even really take possession of all of the land that we were given. Um, they're strong. They have iron chariots, and even though we were supposed to drive them out, we can't." Is what they said. And then here's what Joshua tells them: "You are a numerous people and have great power. You shall not have only one allotment, but the hill country shall be yours. For though it is a forest, you shall clear it and possess it to its farthest borders." And here's the part that really caught my eye: "For you shall drive out the Canaanites, though they have chariots of iron and though they are strong." Sometimes we can doubt God's strength, God's promises. And when we look at ourselves, we think, I'm not strong enough to do this. Can I really, thrive in these circumstances? But we need to remember God's promises, and that God is strong enough to fulfill his promises. So when we think about like eternal life, I mean, it's true that we are not strong enough to obtain it by ourselves. We're not righteous enough. We don't, in ourselves, by ourselves, because of our sin, deserve heaven, eternal life. But God's promises don't rest on us. God's promises rest on Jesus. So when we think about God's promises and the promise of his love and eternal life, we should never look at ourselves and say, well, I can't get that, right? Because God's promises don't rest on us. Trust in Jesus, and he is the fulfillment. Jesus is the fulfillment of God's promises. And therefore, anyone who trusts in him and rests in his sacrifice and work receive the fullness of God's promises. God bless you. We'll see you again tomorrow.